Back on In Focus, and thanks for staying on. The EFF has asked the Finance Minister, Enoch Godongwana, to investigate private security companies hired by government. It claims that many are failing to comply with labour and pension laws, with billions allegedly not paid for workers' benefits, despite deductions being made. Right, let's get some more details on that. We're joined now by EFF spokesperson Snow Tambo. Good to have you, and thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, Tambo. Greetings to your viewers.
From what I'm seeing, it's not a new thing. I think it was before Parliament also in 2017, or maybe even earlier than that. But certainly what I've seen is the FSCA having an agreement with private companies sometime in March last year, which would have needed to be signed by all those private security companies. Why is it that we are still talking about this non-compliance?
Look, first and foremost, I think let's start by saying it's not an EFF claim or allegation. It's a confirmed fact by the Financial Sector Conduct Authority that more than 2,200 private security companies are not complying with the Pension Fund Act in terms of Section 13A. They're deducting monies from workers, security guards in particular, for health benefits and pensions, but they're not paying towards those. And they owe up to the tune of 6 billion rand. And this is a report as recent as September 2023. Yes. So whatever agreement was signed in March, there's clearly an arrogant non-compliance with that agreement. And the concern of the EFF, which is what we have raised with the Minister of Finance, is that there seems to be companies that are contracted by government that are not compliant with the laws of South Africa in terms of labor law. And that is what we're bringing to his attention. So we have picked up this battle this year, and we've been consistently having it. We've met with the National Bargaining Council of South Africa, we've met with the CCMA, we've met with the Department of Labor as well. And there's a common appreciation that workers are suffering as a result of this. And the only role player or stakeholder that doesn't seem to be coming on board is the actual regulator of the private security sector that keeps on certifying these companies, even though they're not compliant and they're basically massively looting workers' money. And that is CIRA. They are arrogantly non-compliant. They don't cooperate with the Department of Labor. They don't cooperate with the Bargaining Council. They don't cooperate with the EFF that has been trying to meet with them as well. So that must be put on record, that the regulatory authority that is supposed to ensure that private security companies in South Africa operate according to the law is not ensuring that. And the workers of South Africa, the security guards of South Africa who are standing outside of this building today, some are standing outside of Airport South Africa, some are working at the Department of Labor, the Department of Health, and various sectors of our society who are standing out in the cold, can't get health care when they need it, die without their pension funds being paid towards, even though that money was deducted by them. Their wives and children are left destitute, even though money was taken from them while they were employed. And that's what we're calling out.
Last I seen, at least, I don't know if the situation has changed, but CIRA says they are not in the Board of Trustees of the fund.
Look, CIRA's role in this is not necessarily to ensure that funds are paid over, because they are not an institution that deals with that financial aspect of what we're talking to. One of the provisions of CIRA's statutory establishment is that they must ensure that any company that is registered under them is compliant with the Constitution of South Africa and the laws of South Africa. And companies that are deducting monies from private security guards that are supposed to be paid for health benefits or pension funds and are not doing so are committing a criminal act. They're in violation of Section 13 of the Labour Law of the Pension Fund Act of South Africa in particular. And CIRA's responsibility, therefore, as a regulatory authority, would be to revoke the operating licenses of those companies. That is their role. So they're denying something they're not being confronted about. And that is the mischievous nature in which they're operating, because they are now pretending to be clamping down on non-compliance, developing hotlines to report corruption or fraud within the sector. And this is only coming after the EFF has raised this flag that security guards in South Africa are being stolen from and are being exploited. But they are refusing to come to the table with the Department of Labor that regulates that sector.
But are you not letting the board and the trustees go scot-free? Are they not supposed to be held accountable, those who are administrating the fund? At some point they said, no, we have changed our administrator, we've got a new administrator, but there have been no administrative penalties, so it seems.
Look, absolutely, they must also account as to why the situation has existed for so long. But also, we've written not only to the Minister of Finance in terms of the contractual relations government has with these non-compliant companies, we've written to the FSCA as well as to what have you done to ensure that these companies become compliant. Because for you to year on year issue out a list of companies that are not compliant doesn't seem to be working for you. These companies are still operating in South Africa. So what role is the FSCA in ensuring that either the repayment of these monies or the the revoking of the operating licenses of these companies as well. So there's a role that all stakeholders ought to play here. And you're right, the Board of Trustees of the pension funds also should be playing a much more proactive role. But what happens in the labor sector is that there's so many different entities and stakeholders established that we are constantly jumping hoops in order to get justice for workers. And that's what makes workers give up on these struggles. The Bargaining Council was telling us, for example, when we met with them, with the head of labor desk of the EFF, that there's so many hoops to jump that by the time you want to reclaim that money, it will actually cost you more to litigate, try and reclaim the money that you are trying to claim. You'll be owed, for example, in terms of pension fund or health benefits, an amount of 5,000 rand. But the process to get that money back might cost more than the money you're trying to claim. So all of these establishment of different stakeholders that are not cooperating, that are not cohesive, results in the demoralizing of workers and results in families of security guards suffering a huge injustice. So we're trying to fill into that gap as legislatures, as members of parliament.
2,224, how many employees are affected? I mean, how many complaints do you receive?
Look, we've established a line where security guards can report to us whether they had money deducted from them, and this was not paid either towards their health benefits or their pension funds. We've received more than 150 reports in that regard, and that line was only established last week. So you can see that at the rate that we're going to reach very high numbers. But we need CIRA to come on board so that we can be able to identify these companies and identify who they employ as well, because they are registered with them. So their non-cooperation makes it difficult as well to identify these workers. Some of them report these companies on an anonymous basis because they are scared of victimization. Yeah. Some of them have already died, but monies were already taken from them.
Monies were never paid.
And monies were never paid towards their pension funds. Their children and widows are left destitute. So it's an extreme, huge problem that we're concerned as to why the labor sector in South Africa has not risen in a much more pointed manner. 6 billion rand has been stolen from workers. And it's something that should be causing an uproar.
What would it take to be able to address, or even how long will it be able to take to address that particular backlog?
Look, as the EFF, we've said to the Minister of Finance in the letter written to him through our Deputy President, who's the Chief Whip in Parliament, that once they conduct this thorough audit of establishing what companies, for example, are contracted by government that are non-compliant and have been stealing workers of money, they must be given a 3-month repayment period to pay back this money either to the relevant pension funds like the private security sector pension fund or any pension fund that security guards might be registered to, their health benefits as well. They have 3 months to pay that money back if workers are still active in the sector. If a worker has either been deceased or has left that sector, then that money must be paid to their dependents and their beneficiaries, so that, or them as well if they've retired from the sector as well. So after that 3 months, if there's still a company that is non-compliant, that is contracted by government, then government must cancel that contract, because the South African government cannot be complicit in the robbery and exploitation of workers of South Africa. So that's a measure that we're saying we can implement as legislatures and lawmakers of South Africa through the Ministry of Finance. So while CIRA is non-cooperative, this is something we can do on our side so that we're not complicit as the lawmakers and elected people in this country in the theft of workers' monies. But it can be much quicker so that we can avoid jumping through various hoops to resolve something that needs an immediate resolution. The poverty of our people, the bread basket in South Africa is so expensive that you can just have money taken from you for certain benefits. When you're a precarious worker like a security guard, you're out in the cold at night, you work long hours, your life is at risk, and people are taking money for you on the basis that should you die, this money will be given to your family. Should you get sick, you will have health cover. But that money is not being paid towards that. So it's an exploitation of a vulnerable sector of workers that we're all dependent on in society, and we should all stand up.
I'm wondering, though, I mean, how effective would that be? I mean, of the 2,224 private security companies, how many of them are doing business with the state?
Quite a few. So what we agreed on with the meeting that we had with the Department of Labour and the Bargaining Council and the CCMA is that we're going to hand over the data we have as the EFF, which we do have. At the time when we met with them, we had data of about 23 private security companies that are working in Airport South Africa, working within the Department of Labour itself, which is quite ironic, working in the Department of Health, working in municipalities such as the municipality of Cape Town, working across many government departments that are implicated and contracted by government but are implicated in this non-compliance. The Bargaining Council also has a much more exhaustive list that they've gathered and, of course, handed over to the Department of Labour. So the commitment by the Department of Labour was that they are also equally going to write to the Minister of Finance and alert him of this non-compliance by companies that are contracted by government itself. So the letter we've written has been duplicated in the side of the Department of Labor.